DAP Products has a new thread locker, but does it work? We'll find out. I'm Tim Johnson. You're watching Shop Tool Reviews. DAP Products came out with a new line called Tank Bond, and Tank Bond has 3 thread locking compounds. Now we wanted to know, do they actually work? So we figured we'd take some nuts and bolts, put some thread locker on them, and find out. That's what we did. Well, they've got 3 products. One of them is the orange, and they're just calling it a thread stopper. Now the idea here is not to really increase the yield strength, if you will, but it's just to hold nuts and bolts in their place, whether it's in a place where there may be some vibration, or if it's just even screwed into wood or plastic. Don't want those to back out, and you don't necessarily want to keep them permanently. You can use the thread stopper to kind of a little gooey substance, if you will, to kind of hold it in place. So we wanted to find out, does that actually work? Then they have the blue and the red, which is typical in what you're used to in thread locking, like you see with Permatex or Loctite. And so the red is the permanent strength and the blue is their medium strength. So we thought, you know what, why not take a bunch of nuts and bolts and actually test, with nothing on them, and then test with the orange, the blue, and the red on there, and find out what kind of yield we get afterwards when we're backing those nuts off. So let's step over to the workbench. Let's actually use some of this stuff and see what we find out. So DAP has a new line out called Tank Bond. This is their thread locker, as we were talking about. This is their blue thread locker. They have a red thread locker, which they're calling permanent. They're calling the blue as removable or medium strength. And then they have a thread stopper, which is just basically to kind of an anti-vibration, if you will. So which I thought was interesting, doesn't have to be in metal. It could be something, a screw into plastic, a screw into wood. They're claiming they can put this on there and it basically just keeps it from vibrating loose, keeps it from backing out. So more of just kind of a removal stopper, if you will, not necessarily thread locker. So what we're going to do, we're going to test all 3 of these. I've got some 1/2-inch diameter bolts here. These are, I believe it's A30 or 307A, which would be equivalent to like a grade 2. And torque rating on these is like 32 foot-pounds. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a sample row. I guess that would be a column, wouldn't it? So we're going to have a sample column, which are going to have nothing on it. By the way, we took these bolts. They're brand new. They've never been in anything. And the nuts as well. We took them, put them in degreaser and some purple stuff, soaked them, agitated them, scrubbed them, made sure the threads were really clean with a brush, and then we hosed them off with some good clean water, and then let them drip dry for a little bit, and then used a blower or blowgun, an air compressor and blowgun to blow them dry. And this is how you see them. No oil on them, no residual from manufacturing or anything like that. So very clean, ready to go. We're not going to put anything on the threads, on the nuts or the bolts. Threads are nice and clean. We made sure beforehand that they thread all the way on with no problems, no hard spots or anything like that. So we're going to have a sample row which will have nothing on it. We're going to torque them. Like I said, the torque rating is supposed to be 32 foot-pounds. We're going to take it up to 35 foot-pounds on this first row. Actually, we're going to do them all to 35 foot-pounds, but the first column is going to have nothing on it, just bare threads. Second column, we're going to use the orange, which is the thread stopper. Third column, we're going to use the blue, which is the removable or the medium strength thread locker. And then we're going to use the permanent or the red thread locker here on the end. We're going to let them set for an hour. It says that there's like a 10-minute window as far as for it to reach to a secure strength, if you will. And then we're going to let them sit an hour, going to come back, going to take them off, and see how many foot-pounds it takes to take them off. This will be kind of our sample to let us know of what how many foot-pounds it takes to take off those 35 foot-pounds to set them. And then we'll know from the sample as to the holding strength of these other thread lockers as well. So let's go ahead and get to it. So just read the instructions real quick. They're all pretty similar. So again, this is the thread stopper, which is the orange stuff. Says absorbs shock and vibration, works on all fastener types and sizes. Also says metal, wood, plastic, and more. We're not going to test that side of it. Wear gloves, blah, blah, shake well, remove cap, blah, blah. Okay, Apply liquid surface to the threads, filling the threads entirely. I don't know if we'll do that, but we'll cover them good where the nut's going to go. Allow liquid coating 30 minutes to dry. Wow, that's a long time. Then install coated fastener tightly in place. Okay. Let's see the red here. You know what? Let's go ahead and do those. Go ahead and do the sample. We'll go ahead and do the orange, and then we'll come back and do the blue and the red thread locker. So you see all those nuts went on there very easily. And then I'm going to go ahead and stick my bolts in here for the second row. Shake our orange really well. Wonder if we got to cut the top here. Looks like we do. Razor knife to cut. Whoa. That squirted everywhere. So we'll put a nice coating on there. And it says to cover the thread. So we're not going to cover all the threads, but we'll cover the majority. At least where the nut's going to go. And on that one it says let it dry. So we're going to let that one dry. While we're letting that dry, we'll move on to the blue. Blue, apply gel to surface and threads, filling threads entirely. And temperature must be between 40 and 120. It's closer to 120, I can tell you that. Install coated fastener tightly in place. Product will fix rapidly in 10 minutes. So this doesn't need any set time. So we're going to take the blue. We'll go ahead and cut the tip on this one. Make sure not to squeeze that one this time. So we've got the tip cut. And then, yeah, go ahead and put it in here first. Okay. So this is definitely a gel consistency. So I'm going to pull these out. So you'll look, see, this is nice, by the way, that you got this gel consistency. And I don't usually put this much, like the instructions say. I usually run me a line and let the nut put it on, but I'm going to do what the instructions say here and coat this liberally to fill the threads. But I like that gel. It definitely goes in there nice and doesn't drip anywhere. We'll do the same to this one. Okay, so let's put our nuts on here. All right, now let's go ahead, and we're still letting this dry. And so we'll go ahead and let's do the red as well. So we can get that on there. I believe the instructions are the same on it. Apply gel to surface, install coated tightly in place. Yeah, product will rapidly set and yep, fill the threads, yes. So it says it'll rapidly set in 10 minutes. So I need to hurry and get these on here so that I can get them tight before it sets. And there's 3. We'll get these nuts on here and then we'll get them torqued down. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to torque these down and then we'll let them set for an hour and come back. Okay, so we're going to use our nifty little torque wrench adapter here. Calibrate so it's at 0. So we'll do our sample here, and let me put a wrench here on the back. Again, we're going to go to 35. 36.2. I'm going to go ahead and record that. 35.3. 35.1. Okay. So you see I've got here on my sheet, I've got sample, orange, blue, and red. So we'll go ahead and skip over to blue since we're letting the orange dry. 35.3. Another 35.3. Another 35.3. Let's go over to the red. Hey, if you don't mind, let me jump in here for a second. Would you please hit the like and subscribe button if you like this video? If you don't like it, give us a thumbs down, but let us know in the comments why. Also, that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed yet, and that bell notification, that's going to let you know when new videos are available. Back to the video. 35.7. 35.6. And 35.6. So our sample is 36.2, 35.3, and 35.1. Our blue is 35.3, 35.3, 35.3. I dialed that in pretty good on that one. And then our red is 35.7, 35.6, and 35.6. Now, we'll just compare when we back those off and get us a closer average, but they're all pretty close within each other. But anyway, so there we have it. Let's wait a few more minutes. We'll put these nuts on and torque them down, and then we'll let it set. But we're going to let them all set an hour. Actually, we'll let these set 30 minutes, come back, tighten them, and then we'll let it 30 more minutes, and that'll give us a whole hour on all of them except these. But these don't need a rest time after it's dried, so it still should give us a good result. Okay, so now these have set for 30 minutes now, so they should be good to go to put these nuts on, and we'll see if they feel any different. Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, they've definitely got some tension there, and these are what they're calling their thread stopper. So keeping those nuts from turning. Definitely feels like it would do that. It feels kind of a gooey consistency, but I think probably more. I might be able to get them hand tight on there. That one no, and that one no. And again, we'll go ahead and torque these. I don't know that these are going to yield anything greater than how much we tighten them, because they're really not made to do that, but we'll just see anyway. I can definitely feel how they work. 55 or 35.4. 35.6. 35.1. All right, so we'll let those sit another 30 minutes, and then that'll give us an hour on the blue and the red, and then we'll come back and back all these off and see how they did. Okay, so it's been an hour now for obviously the sample set, which doesn't matter, but for the blue and the red. We waited 30 minutes on the orange, then we put the nuts on and torqued them down, and it's been 30 minutes since then. So it's really been a little more than an hour. Now, on the blue and the red, it says that product will fix rapidly in 10 minutes and then allow 24 hours to cure. So full cure is 24 hours. Again, we're going to try it out here after an hour to get an idea of what kind of holding power, did it increase the holding power, if at all. So let's go ahead and back off our samples. We'll record that. We'll back off the orange, then the blue, and the red. All right, we'll turn on our torque calculator here. We'll go into backwards mode. Here we go. So 26.8. That's the bottom one. Okay. Next one. 26.4. 28.1. So that is our dry sample. So nothing on those. 28.1, 26.4, and 26.8. Not a bad sample, I don't believe. So this will be the orange. Again, I don't expect anything different, but we may get something. 27.7, looks about the same. 29.9. And 27.7. So again, that's 27.7, 29.9, and 27.7. I would say that didn't really increase the yield strength on that, but again, it definitely holds. You can feel it, that it's not letting that fastener turn as easily as when you break these free and spin them. Okay, so this is the blue thread locker. So now we're on to the blue. Do the top one here. 36.2. So keep in mind now, even though we tighten it to 35.3, usually it only takes 75 to 80% to break those free. So I would call that a definite increase that it took 36 pounds to break those free. Okay, let's do the second one. 35.4. Do the bottom one here. 40.1. So again on the blue, 36.2, 35.4, and 40.1. Now we'll go into the red. Now these are supposed to be permanent, so they should have a higher yield strength to back these off, right? Okay, let's see. 43.3. 43.6. And 40.9. So again, 43.3, 43.6, and 40.9. So we went ahead and we put blue Loctite back on the blue and red Loctite back on the red to do a 24-hour test as well, because we wanted to see the results of what it would yield after 24 hours. So these were our torque tightening, 35.2, 36.1, 35.1 on the blue, and on the red, 35.2, 35.6, and 35.2. So it's been a day, so we're gonna take these off, see what they yield, and we'll record those results as well, and then we'll compile all this data for you and get this wrapped up. Finally, huh? Okay, so let's start on the blue. At the top, we're zeroed out. 39.5. Doesn't look like it's going to be much higher than the 1 hour test. 42.2. Then the last one, 43.3. Okay, let's go back to the red. 37.7, that's interesting. 49.5. 47.3. So the results on the blue were 39.5, 42.2, and 43.3. And then on the red, 37.7, 49.5, and 47.3. Okay, I'm going to try not to get too geeky on this, because once I start into a spreadsheet, I typically get a little overboard in formulas. I'm going to try to stay away from that and keep this as simple as possible. So let's first look at our sample. Now our sample we tightened at 36.2, 35.3, and 35.1. That gave us an average of 35.5 foot-pounds for tightening. Now, if you go into the hundredths column, it's actually 35.53. So the average for the tightening of the sample, the 3 sample bolts that didn't have anything on them, just the nuts and bolts, was 35.53. Now, if you take the average of all the tightening of the bolts, which is both, you know, which is all the orange, the blue, and the red, as well as the 1 hour sample, as well as the 24-hour samples, you're looking at now 18 different samples. The average of that was 35.46. Now, I've got to point to this, so just bear with me. So you got 35.53 was the sample on the first 3 bolts. And then you've got an average of all of it at 35.46. That's within a 0.2%, so 1/5 of 1% difference in the tightening of all the bolts. So what I'm saying is, can we agree that that's a sample, that's a good sample, so that we can use the loosening torque, which was an average of 27.1 on the first 3 bolts, and that's going to be used as kind of our factor for the rest of these calculations. So if we can agree to that now 27.1 is our comparison tool. That's what we're going to use to compare the rest of these numbers when we're loosening them to that 27.1, because that's how many foot-pounds it took to break free that average of 35.5 tightening force, okay? Because we know it takes less force to back a nut off as it does to tighten it. So our average, our sample average is 27.1 for loosening. That's our baseline for the rest of these measurements in backing these bolts off. So looking at the orange tank bond, which is their thread stopper, they're saying, so it's just made to kind of hold things in place, not necessarily, hold them tighter, if you will. But backing those off, and I will tell you, putting those on, there was kind of a gooey feel to it as you're screwing them on. You could definitely feel there was resistance there. And so we basically netted an average of loosening of 28.4, which is an increase in 4.6% over the baseline. So even though it's not meant to do so, it's still held a little tighter than the baseline of 27.1. Now moving over into the blue and looking at the 1 hour. So after they sat for an hour, we're looking at the average increase was 27.0% increase over the baseline of 27.1. So the loosening force was 36.2, 35.4, and 40.1, which again, compared to the 27.1 foot-pounds, again, gives us an average increase of 27%. Now, after 24 hours with the blue tank bond, you're looking at a 34.9% increase. So keeping that between an hour and 24 hours, there was a noticeable gain of 23% between those. So it made sense to wait 24 hours because you're going to get a significant increase in strength there. Now, going over to the red, then with the red, we had the loosening force of the 1 hour sample at 43.3 foot-pounds, 43.6 foot-pounds, and 40.9 foot-pounds. Now that was an average increase of 36.3%. So the 1 hour increase was 36.3% greater than the force it took of the baseline. Now jumping to 24 hours, it was an increase of 38.7%. Now it wasn't as big of a jump on the red going from the 1 hour to the 24 hour as it was on the blue from the 1 hour to the 24 hour. But still there was an increase, and that was an increase of 6%. Now here's an interesting thing, which again, we could have done a sample of 120 bolts and definitely would have yielded some closer results probably, or some that we could throw out the lows, throw out the highs. But I did notice on the blue and the red, there was one low number in the 24-hour results that were actually lower than the 1 hour results, if that makes sense. So one number on both of those were lower. So maybe that was an oddball and we could throw that out. So you have more of an increase in waiting that 24 hours. Anyway, so that's our results. Does it make sense to use thread locker? Yeah, I think so. Does it work? Yeah, I think it definitely works. Does it matter to wait from 1 hour to 24 hours? Maybe. I think it definitely probably does. If you looked at a bigger sample, there's definitely an increase on both. Does it make a difference between you blowing a head gasket because you torqued down the bolts and didn't wait 24 hours and you drove it in 1 hour? I don't know. Maybe. It may be enough. One thing I didn't understand is they call it a permanent bond, which, maybe that's not supposed to ruin the bolt. But it definitely didn't have a permanent bond. Now, I will say that backing off the red, the whole way with the nut, you had more force. In fact, I actually put the torque meter on there and could measure. There was more resistance the entire way off with the nut than with the blue. There's no scientific evidence right there, but just letting you know kind of that seat of the pants feel. So anyway, this is the new Tank Bond thread locker, blue, red, and the orange. Check it out. I think they sell for about $9 a piece. That was interesting to me as well, because I think LOCTITE sells for about $6, Permatex for about $6 as well. This is a gel where you're supposed to be able to apply it overhead as well, no drip or anything like that. But again, I was curious why it's selling for more than your typical LOCTITE and Permatex. But anyway, check it out for yourself. Have a great day and go out and do something nice for someone.